Hello, welcome. Uh, that's not how presentations work. Slideshow. Okay, cool. I'm Dave. I work at Privy. Before getting into the Web3 space, I spent time working in self-driving, the self-driving car space at Aurora and at Google X. Both of those projects were centered in robotics, which was incredibly fun, had a great time, met great people. But eventually I realized that these projects were not very centered around social issues and people. And so what really drew me into Web3 was having societal issues and people issues built front and center in conjunction with technology, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is, as we build the next version of the web, I'm super excited about setting new defaults, setting new, thinking about how we build a digital identities online. And so, in summary, really, what brought me to Web3 was NFTs. I'm obviously joking. This is really just a shill for Blockchain Smokers, which is a project built by one of our coworkers, Nick. And so you should check out blockchainsmokers.xyz. It's a great project, beautiful. But what really brought me here was thinking about new privacy defaults in Web3 and how do we go about building them. And so what do I mean by that? Let's take a step back. And so this is going to be the agenda for the workshop. I'm going to start by talking about what we mean by the user data problem and jump into what Privy provides. And then we'll do a live coding session with an app built on top of Privy. Along the way, we'll be guided by our little mascot, Blobby, on the side over there to point to where we are in the talk. So what is the problem? So it shouldn't be news that Web3 has a bit of a UX issue. And so our entry into a lot of Web3 apps is via the wallet. But it doesn't really make that much sense necessarily that user identities is tied to these wallet addresses, right? So I have like a number of wallets. One is public, dandydavy.eth. A number of other ones are also public, but some I might want to keep secret, like a burner account or something like that. But the UX experience is tied to each wallet, even though I'm one consistent person. And then on the dev side, managing user sessions is a confusing endeavor, right? So you have to keep track of like when a particular wallet address is authenticated, keep track of that state, and handle authentication. So sessions are hard. Additionally, this is a tweet from January of this year, which is actually just wild. MakerDAO was about to dump $600 million of ETH unless someone can phone up some random dude in the next 30 minutes and tell him the top of his vaults. And so notifying off-chain users is unsolved, which is actually crazy. It feels like we're trying to say that we're building the next iteration of the web, but this is like a 20th century problem, right? So what is going on? So what are current solutions for dealing with this? One example is just a simple profile page that OpenSea might throw up. And you can see here, we'll just take in email addresses the same way that we've done in the past in Web 2. And we have some way of notifying users. But then we kind of go back into the same world that we've been living in, where you might just toss this into PostgreSDB. And that works. But we kind of end up in this state, where we're doing things in a very Web 2 way. And it's risky to take on user data. So Ledger is a really great security company, builds great hardware wallets. But in July 2020, they were apparently compromised and hacked, resulting in a data breach of a lot of users' personal information because they're storing PII data in kind of the same solution that we talked about with what we imagine OpenSea is doing with just like throwing in a Postgres. So recently, there's been a lot of discussion on like what should go on-chain, what should go off-chain. We've kind of talked through like one solution for off-chain data. You might ask, why don't we put things on-chain? But sensitive user data should really never be on-chain, right? So on-chain data is there forever. Even if it's encrypted or something like that, encryption changes over time. And so algorithms we previously thought were secure are no longer secure. And so on-chain is also not the answer here. There's a famous adage called "Don't roll your own crypto." You might imagine taking on this work and just being like, "Oh, well, I'm a great dev. I'll deal with this on my own." But there's just so many challenges in terms of security and dealing with this aspect of security on your own. Crypto is really like advancing the state of cryptography is really a consensus, like peer-reviewed process. It takes a long time. Even just using crypto exposes yourself to like, timing attacks, brute force attacks. We've highlighted architecture flaws, and it's just a challenging thing. Doable if you want to invest time and expertise and just hire right people and just learn how to use cryptography correctly. But this might not be what you want to focus on as an app developer, right? So just to recap, in order to build great products, we want personalization and PII. Collecting user data is risky. Doing it right is hard. Privacy does matter. And we need a bridge for off-chain data. And that's where we come in. I'm from Privy.io. We build simple APIs to manage user data off-chain. And this is where we enter the Privy solution. So what do? We allow you to associate user data to wallets privately. What that means is we have simple APIs and JS libraries to manage off-chain user data. We do end-to-end encryption. So it's encrypted starting from the browser at rest, completely end-to-end. And we also provide some user session management. We never see your data in plain text, right? And it's ready to use right now. So what we're going to get into is kind of how to use this in, just off the bat in a hackathon. So how does Privy work? This is the browser. This is where your app lives. You have access to MetaMask, which provides the auth for Privy, or Privy provides an auth wrapper so that you can authenticate. And then everything going from your browser is encrypted end-to-end to the data store. And obviously from your app separately outside of Privy, you can access on-chain data as well. But we provide an off-chain data hosted infrastructure to take on user data and have it done securely, and a permissioning engine to handle who gets to see this data. And so really what this all boils down to is, I've spent a number of minutes talking about like, what are the challenges? Why are we doing this? But if you remember just one thing from this talk, it's really this slide, right? It comes down to just as simple as this. We have an SDK where you can just call privy.put and privy.get. And it's really just a couple lines. Here's an example user ID, in this case, a wallet address. And we want to take on a couple pieces of user data, for example, email or age. And we can just store it in privy.put and get it from privy.get, email, age, and we get that data back out, right? Which is kind of incredible. Like I've spent so long talking about all the challenges, but from an app developer perspective, you don't see any of you don't worry about, you don't see that this is encrypted. Like it acts as if everything is unencrypted or anything, but the security is just built right in. And so this is what we mean when we say we want to build better defaults for Web3.
Quick question on that. How do you do file types like images?
There's a separate put file method.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. And then in addition to that, we also provide some additional convenience wrappers. So we build on top of EIP standard called sign in with Ethereum, abbreviated CWE. And here's an example of just like 5 lines of code where you can just easily have an auth solution. You just take in a Privy API key, this is like a MetaMask or any other Ethereum provider, sessions authenticate, and then you have a client that you can use to do Privy, put, and get. So a few lines of code and you're ready to get started. So with Privy, like we said, we want to provide a solution for a privacy-preserving data store. But we know that this won't happen without making it just dead simple for devs, right? So we're trying to have the best of both worlds, where you can build products quickly and you can also do right by your users and not expose them to security risks, not expose them to ask, gives you a little message to be like, do you really want to sign in? I'm like, yes. And boom, here is my mailbox. I just ran this before I started, so it has some mail in there. But just to show that we're going to see this working, we're going to put in a new file besides this one. So I'm going to select the file to send. Imagine you have some sensitive data, like a driver's license. And I will go and grab my wallet address just to send to myself. Press send. There's a flush sound. And boom, you got mail. And oop, give me a second. Oh, I need to refresh. And boom, there's a driver's license. And so, cool. I was able to send data to myself, but I've set this up in a way that this will actually not work when I try to send to my other wallet address. So let's send this little driver's license to a different wallet address. Say this one. And then I'll sign out. Let's sign in. And this does not show up anything. And so let's see why that is. So I'll go to the console. Again, I had to switch everything to localhost recently. Let's see, fields. And we see that we've set up these roles. So this is where you get to access what are the permissions set on each field. So the way this works is I have a field called inbox that lets anyone, where we're storing the file data, right? So right now, only self can read and self can write. What self means is that only the address can write to its own address field, but the point of the inbox is that anyone can write to your inbox so you can receive files from anyone, right? So we'll change the writer role to public, update the field, and let's try this again. I'll sign out. Sign in with Ethereum. The hard part of this is actually managing MetaMask interface to a certain degree. I'm like, let's try and sign into, okay. And we'll send the peach this time to wallet address, let's say this one. Error authenticating. Interesting. like I said, I did some last-minute changes to this demo right before this, switching everything to localhost. And so I'm not going to try and live debug this error right now, but the point is that we're going to, we set the permissions correctly, we send it to ourselves. What I want to make sure I have time for is to show how easy it is to add another field to this demo, right? So, so here I've jumped into the code itself. So the parts that you want that are relevant here are just the Privy parts. So we're gonna look at this method fetch inbox from Privy, and this is exactly the get function that we were talking about before. Let me blow this up a little bit and close this. Okay, so this is the relevant parts of the code, right? So we get the field from Privy, and then we set it to a bit of React state, like inbox, set inbox. And so let's think about what would happen if we just wanted to add another field, right? So right now we're sending a file to each other or to other wall addresses. What happens what do we need to do if we want to just additionally send a message? So we'll go ahead and start by creating a little bit of additional state. So let's just say there's a message and set message, and this will just be a string. I don't know why MetaMask is coming up. We'll ignore that. Okay, so string, and well, if you remember, the Privy call is just privy.get. Privy.get address, and we will now take in the field name, which is message, which, if you remember, we set up via the console. So we will jump to the console and set up a field corresponding to this new piece of user data we're taking on. And we'll have the defaults admin itself. We'll create the field. And now we can get it in fetch inbox from Privy. We'll propagate that to the React state. And then if message and we provide a function called text to actually get the plain text off of an instance that we grabbed from Privy. And then we need to actually send it to Privy when we write. So it's the same as what we've done, except message, and then any string that we want to write to another user. So let's just say hello from ECC, right? And then the final thing we want to do is actually show this in our UI. So let's just hop down to like where we have the inbox over here, and at the very end of the div, we'll just add another div, if or message, and a little div that shows the message itself, right? Message div. Cool. So let's see what happens when we try to send ourselves a message. Sure. So let's select the file to send, just to trigger the onSend method that we had. We'll send it to this F9. Refresh, and boom, hello from ECC. So we just walked through the whole process of adding a new field, hooking it into privy.put, and getting it from privy.get. And so you saw, that took maybe 2 minutes, and so that's really just how easy it is to get started with Privy. So yeah, that about wraps up our talk. And so our whole team is here. We're on Discord. We'd love to talk to you if you hack with us, and we have prizes for the hackathon. So yeah, thanks for coming and learning about Privy, and we'll be around. I'm Dave. Hit me up on Discord. Happy to answer questions. Cool. if you have any questions now, also down to talk.
What are the types of problems that you're hoping to see people build towards?
That's a general question. I can say like some of the use cases that we've been excited about is, for example, like the notification use case. Also, just like the use case in terms of like kind of consolidating what it means to have a user identity on Web3. So like linking wallet addresses together. But really, it's like the layer that we built out right now is at such a foundational layer that like it opens the door for a huge variety of apps. And so, it's a little hard to answer. It's like, what is the problem that we're most excited about? Well, I guess the problem that we're most excited about kind of corresponds to like any large problem, So we're excited to see what people build is the short answer. But yeah.
Is there sort of a URL like IPFS pinning solution that I could use Privy in a smart contract, for example? So like a user uploads something, an image, and then wraps it in an NFT. You sort of need that URL. Does Privy have put file, get out a URL?
Yeah. So there is. It is in the advanced concepts section of our docs, but we do have like we do generate a URL with like a content addressing scheme similar to what IPFS uses, and so I could walk you through that part kind of offline, but we do offer that service as well.
Cool.
Cool. Well, if no one else has questions, thanks so much for coming. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.